Hello everybody. In today's video I would like to discuss one of my probably favorite cameras to work on and to use, Minolta X-700. Now in front of me I have two examples of seemingly identical cameras, which they pretty much are in terms of version and the model. But there is a distinct difference between them, and that's the generation. One generation is an earlier generation, and another one is a slightly more current or more modern generation, if you will. Now, the main difference between the two is the infamous capacitor problem, and the other one is pretty reliable. The one that is pretty reliable is an older generation, and the one that seemingly continues having the capacitor problem is the newer generation. So what I'll do next is basically demonstrate the difference, the main difference. So here I've got two examples of the same camera, and you can notice simply by looking at the power circuit board here and there, you have this newer generation board with a new style aluminum capacitor that basically destroyed this entire circuit board here. It destroyed it by leaking the chemical right on the board and corroding and affecting pretty much everything that it touches over time. In this case, you have one of two issues. You have a release issue or a power issue failure, where the camera can light up. You can see the operation of the light meter sometimes, and when you press the release button, nothing happens. Sometimes you may not even see the lights. It's like there's no power. And then we have a different example here, and that's the original generation, an older generation, with the ceramic capacitor, and it looks crystal clear. There is nothing, no residue of any kind, no leaking. Why? Because this is a reliable capacitor that does not leak. Okay, it doesn't have the properties that will allow it to leak because of the type of the encompassing material that it's using. And this one is obviously pretty much just a matter of time. And I guess it's been, what, 30-40 years, and that's about time for these caps to fail. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate the process of how I go about repairing this problem. This is a very lengthy process that requires full disassembly, removing these wires, desoldering the wires, and cleaning of the power plates. Back in the day, there used to be a way for us to order this circuit board brand new, pop it in, disconnect all the wires, resolder them, and it's good to go. So what I'll do is I will put away my older example here, working camera, and I'm gonna work on this specific one. So there's two issues here. Once this capacitor fails, so this power circuit board needs to be cleaned, new capacitor replaced. Do not just, if you decide to do it yourself, do not just remove this cap and replace it. I've seen it many times. It doesn't do anything whatsoever except wasting your time and money buying these caps. In addition to that, after cleaning it, there's another capacitor on top that we'll have to get to, and probably it's in the same condition as the one down here. So what I'll do, I'll create a two-part video series. In the first part, we'll demonstrate process of cleaning the bottom plate, and in the second part, we'll demonstrate the cleaning of the top portion of this circuit board, and hopefully it fixes the problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this. The first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the battery. So the process is pretty tedious, but when and if we're successful, hopefully with proper equipment and the correct components, we should be able to get this problem rectified. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna try to desolder this capacitor. Again, a lot of these solder joints here are already crystallized, and it'll take a little bit of preheating to be able to even desolder them. So I'll go ahead and mark the polarity, put away this cap, and I'll go one by one desoldering the rest of the wires. And in some cases also this chemical residue, it gets saturated throughout this board and damages the traces, and I'll have to sometimes recreate new traces or jump the wires. Really depends on the severity of it. So if you own one of these cameras, X700, X370, XG9, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference, but it could, give that extra protection. Do not keep it in humid areas. Keep it in a well ventilated area, and remove the battery if you plan on storing it for more than 6 months for sure. Okay, because if the batteries leak, it could contribute to this problem as well. Okay, so now that all of our wires are separated, I'm going to lift up this plate here and remove it. I'm going to put away the camera for now. Okay, now let's bring a little extra support here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the diode. I'll have to clean it later on before I put it back in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and retouch every single point with fresh solder before I remove the old solder with a desoldering wick. Gonna hopefully look a little bit better after we're done, but for now it does look pretty nasty and grimy. So let's go ahead and remove everything that we can now with this. So I think this camera, X700, gets this bad reputation pretty much just for one reason only, is the capacitor. Had Minolta used a different style capacitor, pretty much continued using ceramic versus aluminum, these problems and symptoms that I'm seeing online and with customers sending these cameras to us wouldn't be a problem. But unfortunately, we have what we have. Okay, now that all the old solder has been removed, we're gonna start cleaning this plate. And again, back in the day, this would not have to be the case. It would just be a removal of this plate entirely and placing a new one. Now it's a different story. Since parts are no longer available for any of these cameras here, we have to do what we have to do to clean, repair, or put it in good working order as much as possible. Okay, this looks much better now than it did before. I'm gonna go ahead and use my eraser to clean the traces. Okay, gonna do one more. Okay, so this is gonna look pretty decent now, much better than before. But I don't care much about the looks. I care about whether it works or not. So I'm gonna go ahead and test out these traces, make sure they are not damaged with my multimeter. From point to point, basically. So from here to the back, we have it. From here, we have that. From here to here, we have it. From here to here, we also have it. Looks like all of our points and traces match. So my next step is basically starting to reassemble everything that I took out, slowly, step by step, starting with this diode. But first I'd like to go ahead and clean it and put some fresh solder points on it. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, So our plate is good to go. I'll put it aside for a second. Now I'm gonna refresh these wires a little bit by putting some fresh solders on the tips here so it can stick to the board well. Again, it could be a case of just one wire having what I call, or we call, cold solder. And that's basically gonna affect everything that, you know, I've done so far with it. So we don't want to be in this situation. Don't want to take a chance, basically. Okay, I think these wires should be good to solder. Go ahead and put a little bit of a lubricant on my shutter bearing here. Now the PCB board goes back in place, secured by a single screw here. Yeah, so like I said, we're going to break it down into two parts. Once I'm finished with the bottom portion, I'll go ahead and in part two start working on the top cover portion. Okay, I think we got all the wires in place. Let's verify that real quickly. Yes. I'm gonna go ahead and reposition them before I put in the support plate back in its slot here. Okay, double check all of my wiring. Everything looks correct. Okay, now in goes the battery support chamber plate. Okay, I'm not gonna screw all 6 screws in yet until I'm certain that everything works, but I will solder the plate in place. And last but not least, we're gonna put in our new capacitor. Okay, so all of our wires are back. The power plate's been cleaned, and we're ready to work on the top portion of the camera. So this was our part 1, and I will see you in part 2. Thank you for watching.